Today I'm talking to Russell B. Farr, who is the founder and CEO of Ticonderoga Publications, and we're going to be talking about the publishing industry and the publicity process and the relationship of authors with small press. Welcome, Russell Farr.
Thank you. Thanks, Nalini.
Hey, what inspired you to start your own publishing house?
It's kind of a long and boring story, but basically I like to summarize it as hanging out with the wrong people at the wrong time. So in the early to mid 90s, I was a kid who got interested in Australian science fiction, and at the time, some of the best stuff was being published by the Eidolon guys in Perth, Jonathan Strahan, Jeremy Byrne, and Richard Scriven. And through the whole Perth community thing, I ended up hanging out with them and saw what they were doing and thought, well, hey, if these guys can do it, why don't I give it a go? So I did. And that's kind of where it all started, from sitting around having coffee in Jonathan's flat to the fame and fortune I have now.
And there's so much money in small press, isn't there?
I mean, early on, Jonathan explained to me the Charles Brown, the late Charles Brown from Locus, was the one who came up with the only way to make a small fortune in small press is to start with a large fortune. So it does kind of work like that. But it has other payoffs, and it's not such a huge money pit as sometimes in the past it has been. So, it swings and roundabouts, and you get to work with lots of cool people and do lots of fun stuff. And for a long time, I've described it as this is the part-time, full-time job that keeps me sane away from my other full-time job. So it pays off that way.
Well, what are the cool people some of the cool things that you've done with some of the cool people?
Some of the cool things with some of the cool people. Well, I've had fantastic opportunity to work with lots of great writers. These two people, if I can get it without too much sunlight. So there's been Angela Slater and Lisa Hannett have been some of the cool people I've worked with. Also got to work with the recently passed, late great, internationally unknown Stephen Utley.
Yes.
We've done 3 books of his, and he's was one of the short story greats, basically. Gardner Dozois, and calls him like the last unknown short story fiction writer. For the Victorians playing along at home, we've got Felicity Dowker, Bread and Circuses. She's writes absolutely fantastic, visceral, dark fantasy horror type stuff. To plug the new stuff going around that we're really proud of, we're also working with Juliette Marillier on her. It's kind of funny to sort of say we're publishing Juliette Marillier's debut collection, because she's been writing for fantasy novels for so many years. But yes, we have her debut as such. So
well, that's pretty exciting.
It's fun. I mean, it's intimidating, and I've got to say I'm working with people, who, and it's quite intimidating to just drop them a line and say, hey, do you want to do a book? But kind of that's what the process entails. So.
And they're saying yes.
And they say yes, or some say no, but quite a few of them say yes, which is really good. And yeah, so to be able to, talk to Juliette Marillier and work with her, which is just, a completely mind-blowing experience to, turn on my email and go, oh, wow, there's an email from Juliette Marillier there, or, and it was quite exciting working with her, because we did the deal via her agent. And so, on a couple of times we've dealt with agents, and it's at that a few times now, and it's a different experience of, we're not just talking writer to writer. It's sort of, trying to sound all posh and everything else to the agent, and sort of make it look like we're not just, mate, or I don't, not just like a little business, but trying to make it that, we've got the writer's best interests at heart. And
yes. So
and
you'll get your people to talk to her people, and you'll be really professional and slick.
Yep.
And look after her.
Yeah, and the only problem with small press is that my people are pretty much either me or my lovely other half, Liz Grzyb. So it's not like we have lots and lots of people. There's two of us who just love books, and Liz who has lots of wild, crazy ideas, and Liz who keeps me on track.
Actually got 3 full-time jobs because you've got the planning of the wedding as well.
I'll be honest and say the wedding, as far as I understand it, the full-time job for the male in the wedding involves us dropping the question, helping pay for it, and turning up on the day. So I wouldn't say that I've necessarily got the full-time job out of it, but Liz has got the full-time job of wrangling, organising and dresses and all that stuff, all the secret women's business that goes along with it.
What do you see as the difference between small press and larger publishing houses?
Money.
That's a big difference.
It works both ways, I think. On one hand, it is, it's easy to summarize it as money. But money works both ways, because it's the idea that in small press, because we don't have lots of money to throw at every writer and every book, and Juliet is not buying another couple of acres of property, or it's probably the amount we're paying Juliet probably goes towards some of her dog food kind of requirements for that kind of thing. But on the other hand, because we're not paying money, we do try and make up for it in other things. So we're always making sure that the writers are involved in the process. And it was Juliet who actually turned around and said, hey, there's this really cool Perth artist, I'd love to do the cover. And we sort of had and showed me some of her stuff and went, yep, this is great. So they get sort of some of the options that they don't necessarily get through large publishing, where it's dictated a lot by and I don't know enough about large publishing because I've never actually properly worked in the area, but it seems to be from listening to people, there's lots about making sure all the covers are commercial, and we try and we sort of try and make up for what we can't provide by the extra service, and making sure at the end of the day that the writer has a book that they're really happy and really proud of, and it sits very attractively on their bookshelf, and they can't necessarily point to the car that they bought with the royalties or anything else, but they can point to the good experience they had it. And
would you mind walking us through a process? So you've acquired a book or an anthology or a collection. What's the process from your perspective?
A lot of the time with small press, the projects actually start with myself or Liz having the idea, not necessarily something coming straight out of the submission pile. Okay, there's usually a moment just after you've published a book, when you've forgotten all the hard stuff and you're just sitting there going, hey, wow, that was really great, let's do another one.
It's like having a child.
yeah. If that's the case, yeah, but haven't gone down that route. But it is the actual idea. You kind of hit a euphoric moment of going, hey, wow, that was really, you're holding the book in your hand, or you've just clicked the last upload to the printer or something like that, and you're going, hey, wow, why don't we do something else? And that's usually where it's born, from this sense of euphoria of going, hey, yeah, I mean, what the hell? I've just clicked on uploaded a collection for such and such. I'm going to ask Juliet Marillier. You get that, or I'm going to ask Kim Wilkins, or I'm going to ask Sarah Douglas. You get that euphoric feeling of going, yes, I can. I'm king of the world.
Yes.
Sort of thing. And that's where it usually starts. And if Liz isn't around to say, well, actually, have you thought of this? But sometimes I'll sort of sit there and say, hey, Liz, do you want to do a Juliet Marillier collection? And she'll be going, yes. Liz doesn't just say no. I don't want it to come across that she's not, she's the voice of reason and common sense, but she doesn't just say no. And every so often I'll mention, hey, we could do a project by X, and there'll be girly fans squeeing, going yes, 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 yes. I'm getting absolutely nothing from across the table here, so it must be true.
I could hear some chuckling in the background.
Yeah. So it that's the start of the process. Often is with the idea of thinking that yes, we can, we can do this, we can do whatever we want, and then it's a case of hunting down the writer. So any writers watching this who don't have contact details for them on their website, please change that, because that's but we've really had that issue for full-length collections. Occasionally we've had that with short story type ideas and things, but generally we've been able to find contact details for most writers that we want to publish. Or once you get, you're in the business long enough, you have access to the various people who sit there hoarding everyone's email addresses, and you just drop a line saying, hey, I don't suppose you've got an email address for, and often they'll, the
whole 6 degrees of separation works for you.
Oh yeah, but it's and that's the thing in Australia and in science fiction and fantasy, it's rarely 6 degrees of separation. You can usually 2 or 3 steps is usually all that's required. Though I'm sure at the moment Orson Scott Card's probably changing his email address faster than anyone can find it. But yeah, that's another problem. So it'll start with the that sort of idea, and dropping the writer a line saying, hey, I've had this really great idea, how would you like to do, and in Juliet's case, it'd be like, how would you like to do lots and lots of short stories? Or with Kat Sparks, who we also got coming out this year, it was like, how would you like to do, why don't we just put together mostly on your science fiction stuff, but sort of. And that's usually how it starts, with this idea of, let's do this, and then across the discussion it might turn into, we could do this, but I'd like to do this as well. And I think that's also what small press kind of gives to the whole process, the idea that we're not necessarily locking down into this one sort of commercial marketing aspect, and it means that some of the projects we do are completely, aren't necessarily able to be summed up in a full sentence.
When you say not locking into a particular marketing aspect, are you talking about not having a particular formula, so you're more flexible, your different projects can be more diverse? Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much. I mean, we might start off with the idea of a project that can be easily defined as being the science fiction stories of Kat Sparks. But then from that, it turns into, but then Kat's also got this really cool story that we'd love to be able to publish, that we'd love to publish. And it's not really science fiction, so it kind of becomes kind of the science fiction stories of Kat Sparks plus some other really cool stories by Kat Sparks. And it, it goes away from being, specifically, okay, this fits into the science fiction, straight science fiction genre, and, stories by single author, and doesn't quite fit into the same boxes that, necessarily a commercial product would fit into. But on the other hand, it's really, really cool. And we found that with the Juliette Marillier book, one of the stories we snuck in was definitely very unlike anything Juliette had done, and it was kind of science fiction-y, but again, it was just a story of magic and love, like all the other stories that she does. But Publishers Weekly, when they reviewed it, pulled that story out as saying, that one's kind of the bit weird. It's otherwise it's all of this level and this consistency, and it's all like this, but then there's this one story that's just kind of not. So. And it's like, but because we're not aiming at that one diverse sort of, that one segment, it's like, and, it's still a cool, fun story, so we're still going to keep it in, sort of thing. So it means that, we can be more flexible, and also, we tend to be more flexible on the length of the book, because I know that commercial publishers are very, very fixed on, okay, it will be 90,000 words, and that's it. And sometimes we sit there and go, yeah, well, we could start off by going, yeah, we're going to aim for 90,000 words, but then either the writer will go off and keep writing and come up with something absolutely fantastic, and it's like, well, we can't not include this, and if it means the book's 100,000 words, the book's 100,000 words. So it gives us that flexibility on contents to work that way.
This is what sets small press apart from a big publishing house. This is all very relevant. Yeah,
I mean, we tend to work more that we have this idea, and the idea might change, but there's the fundamentals of the idea, but it doesn't. The pegs don't have to necessarily fit into exactly the same hole, and it doesn't. At the end of the day, we still produce a product, and I think it's a pretty damn good product, and it's a suitably commercial product, but it's a product that's had probably more of the artist's input into, and focuses a lot more on what they want to put across, without necessarily, I mean, we're not putting across like bloated, this is the author's edition of book X with the extra 20,000 words put in that an editor cut out at some point, or anything like that. Not that kind of thing, but certainly along the lines of, well, I've also got this story, or I've also got this bit that I really want to tell, and worked on it from there. So that's kind of where ideas are born, and sometimes they do come straight out of the submissions pile, and we'll get something and go, hey, wow, I've just read this book by these people I've never heard of, I wouldn't know from a bar of soap, and I'm sitting here a week later and I can still remember bits of it, and how I felt when I read it, and I guess that's the most important thing.
So you've got a variety of ways that you actually get your submissions, and the actual evolution of the book can vary.
Yeah.
What's the process when it comes to publicity and engaging with the public about the sale of the book?
Yeah, it's we've got some things that we definitely do, and some things that we'd like to do if we had more money, and some things that we try and do. I guess because we don't have the resources to send out 100 copies and put that into the hands of every single blogger and reviewer. But on the other hand, if we also sit there, if we get the book ready in time, we also always make sure that we send it out to Publishers Weekly and Kirkus and Library Journal in the States. So to get some bit of international buzz going. Publishers Weekly have been very good. They seem to like our work, so we get regularly reviewed by them. The others, we're still waiting for that first review. But it is, the entire review world is based on, in most, when it comes to small press, the reviewer has the power, in terms that, there's, we can send all the books out we want, but we can't force anyone to review any book. But, we try and spend, I've got, spend a bit of time compiling lists of who tends to like what, and try and place books in front of reviewers that are going to be most receptive to it, and really like getting out to the book bloggers, not just the formal reviewers. I mean, there are a few formal reviewers that really like our stuff and give us good write-ups, but a lot of the time we're just sending books out and they disappear. So we try and get them into the hands, sort of go grassroots, and get them into the hands of the people who enjoy it and talk about it and tell their friends. And it's also where we'll work with writers and go, well, are there any reviewers out there that you've had really good dealings with, or know your stuff and have said really good things, and get the books into their hands as well. As well as getting books out into the various awards panels and those kind of things. So we try and get it out that way, and try and just as well as talking about it a bit ourselves through our own social media. But I have a bit of a marketing background, and it's a case of getting the book out to the people that other people are going to listen to. And there are a few people that will listen to me when I say, hey, wow, there's this fabulous book. But we're also in the world of people going, well, yeah, of course you're going to say it's a fabulous book. You've just bought Juliet Marillier a new car and a new house and a swimming pool, which we haven't actually. But it's that kind of feeling that we've got some money on the line with it. So of course we're saying it's good, but at the end of the day, I think the general difference between small press and large press is and it goes back to a bit of the money, but it's the idea that because we don't necessarily we don't have the accountant sitting there saying, okay, we put this much in, and because it's got this person's name on it, it's going to rake in all this stuff. We do every single project we do because we love the actual book. A lot of it's just going out there talking to people, and it's good that we're in a stage now where we've got a very diverse range of books. So if someone comes up and sort of says, hey, I like reading about fairy tales, I can grab the Angela Slater Girl with No Hands and say, you should check this out. Or Juliet Marillier's got some of that stuff in hers. If someone comes up and they say they want something, involving fairies and shoes and Vikings, pull out Midnight and Moonshine, and that's got all that for them. Or, if someone wants some more heavy science fiction, we've got Greg Mellor's Wild Chrome, which is very much science fiction stories. Or if someone just wants to have their mind completely blown, Stephen Utley's Silurian Tales is, it's one of those books that's hard to describe because you've got someone who has created an entire world about people who time travel back to the Silurian period, so the age of mud and slime. So it's the thing. He decides to open up a big wormhole to going back into the past, and does he do it when there are big, exciting dinosaurs running around? No, it's all about trilobites and little fish and things like that. So
it sounds like it's better researched than the Doctor Who version of Silurians, although that's where I immediately go when you mention Silurians. It's Doctor Who.
yeah, but no, that wasn't quite the Silurians, but it was the 70s. So and also we've also had the opportunity of getting into doing some straight fantasy, and also one for the Victorians out there, that we've reprinted Jane Routley's fantastic trilogy from the late 90s, early noughties, and they're available in book form again. So it gives us that flexibility of going, well, to have a whole range of books available to a whole range of readership. So we're not just putting out 2 or 3 books a year like we used to, and hoping everyone would just love it. Now it's a case of going, we've grown big enough that not everyone will buy every one of our books. So we can in some ways market quite diversely that way, and pick the people who are interested in different things and push it out to them. So mind you, there are about 2 or 3 crazy people out there who do buy every book we do. So, but we love them.
I'm sure you do.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Brian.
The convention circuit seems to be a really big thing in science fiction and fantasy particularly. How does that work for you in terms of building relationships with readers, in terms of publicising books?
It's quite good. We try and get to as many as we can, and as many as we can afford, and time-wise and everything else. And it's good to actually be out there, just having people walk past and finding out what people are reading. Certainly, it's not just about sitting behind a table and saying, okay, this is our latest book. How can you not like Juliet Marillier? You must buy this book now, or anything like that. It's listening to who people are reading and what people are reading, and sometimes it is like, yes, we have nothing for you here, but it's also a case of just finding out who the cool people, who the cool kids are that people are talking about, and then going, wow, so people are talking about this Juliet Marillier person. I've heard of her. Let's do, and I guess I'm using Juliet a lot as an example just because that's the next book out. But it's listening to people and going, there's a lot of buzz over this Joanne Anderton person. Let's hassle them, and at which point they go, yeah, we've got, they turn around and say, I have nothing for you right now, but thanks a lot, And I'm sure Jo won't mind being mentioned in this way because she's about to have a super duper collection come out and all the rest of it. But it is that case of going, of just, it gives us the opportunity of getting out there, because often we're sitting here at home in our own little bubble. It's not so much as much a bubble now as it was probably for a while, because now Liz is co-editing this fantastic year's best. I feel like what's his name? Sham Wow. It slices it, dices it, it cleans up mess. But Liz and Tali Helene over in Melbourne have been collaborating on putting together the year's best Australian fantasy and horror. And they've done that they're on their third volume now. And that certainly helped, because I'll be sitting there listening to Liz reading stuff, and she'll come in and say, hey, wow, this person's a really great writer. And so we get to involved in a little bit of the conversation that way. Or as occasionally happens, because Liz doesn't always proofread absolutely everything over my shoulder now as it's being published. She'll come back in and say, hey, wow, Felicity Dowk is a really cool writer, isn't she? And it's like, yeah, this is why we published her book 6 months ago. I'm glad your cat's getting in the way and not our cat.
She's getting more and more determined to photobomb interviews.
Yeah, no, I think our cat has decided that she's going to stay in bed, so I was kind of worried that, yes, our cat would wander in, and she does have a habit of wandering in and flopping on keyboards, and especially if there's a pile of books beside me, she'll have to come up because they don't smell like her, so she'll have to, rub against them, that kind of. But yeah, it's also good to find out what sort of things people are reading, and it's kind of one of those things that I know there are about, that some publishers are out there looking for trends and what's hot right now, but it's kind of scary that we're at the point where we're actually totally already booked up for 2013 and 2014. So anything we buy now won't be seen until 2015. So it means that we're probably not as responsive to trends, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But certainly it's just good to be out there talking to people, and because we do it because we love books, and so it's great. You get to meet all these people who love books, and we try our best to make our books look as best as possible. Unfortunately, we haven't quite graduated up to the printing in sort of leather with fantastic, real gold lettering and stuff like that. But yeah, I like to think our books look pretty swish, and I certainly have moments of when we get when we get a hardcover back from the printer, and to pull off the dust jacket and go, oh, there's actually real writing on the spine, and it's a real book, that kind of thing. So it's still good to meet people out there who really do still, and people. I know there's a lot of people reading ebooks as well, and we're certainly publishing ebooks. But it's good to have, a conversation about, books in any form. Mm-hmm. And talk to people who are interested in books in any form, and not just because we're 100 years behind in our TV viewing here. So we're still working through Fringe. you know, and things like that. We're not, you know, haven't started on some of the other TV shows that have been going for 3 or 4 seasons that everyone's talking about. So it's good, at least we can talk about books.
Yeah, I can actually identify. People assume that I've watched everything, and I really haven't. What expectations do you have of your authors, you know, in terms of launches and book signings and things like that?
I mean, generally, you know, we don't expect too much of our authors, but we just hope that the overall process leaves them in the state that they'll want to do lots and lots of stuff. And that's, yeah, that's part of our marketing strategy, involves around making sure the writer is really, really happy with the final product, because I think a happy writer sells a lot more books than a non-happy writer. And they'll come, you know, and the writers will come up and say, hey, you know, there's this opportunity coming up. Let's do a book launch. And they'll be like, oh, this sounds really great. And if we can be there, we can. Otherwise, we'll make sure that there's a whole truckload of books there. And work with, you know, people on the ground, like if it's a bookshop or whatever, to make sure that, you know, it's going to go okay. We do try and work work with what the writer, you know, I mean, I don't know that we necessarily have expectations of the writer so much as we expect the writer to have expectations, and we try our best to fulfill those. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not like we've got the resources and the effort to try and, you know, get the writers to go to every single, you know, shop in their state or whatever and pimp their product or anything like that. We don't. We want the writers to feel comfortable that they've got a really good book, and the work is really great, and and we want them to feel that they can go around and tell whoever they want to tell. Mm-hmm. Because I think that tends to work a lot more, and certainly at the moment with a lot of the writers, you know, and a lot of the writers out there are already developing their own communities, and even some of the ones that are on their first or second novel are still, you know, have got their own communities and their own networks. So we try and, you know, work in with them to you know, get the books out to the people in the know, and if they want to have launches, we'll, you know, do what we can in order to make them happen, and that kind of thing. So and it's always, you know, launches are great to have a little bit of buzz, and launches are really good as a face-to-face opportunity for the writer to have the people around who have contributed to the process themselves, and the opportunity to, you know, thank them and hang out with them. So yeah.
So you're talking about keeping the writer happy in the publishing process, and hopefully that ends up, a happy writer will have more energy and feel more positive about the end product, and therefore that's going to work in everybody's favour. It sounds like you do what you can do, and the writer has input into that process. Do you get together and have like a meeting about marketing or publicity and kind of brainstorm what you can do together, or is it a little less formal than that?
It's less formal. That usually comes together in the whole, because, you know, we're dealing with, you know, we've got slightly artistic temperaments, and writers have artistic temperaments, and, you know, we don't come up with ideas sitting around in a meeting. It's more that I'll wake up in the morning and, you know, have an email from Kim Wilkins saying, hey, you know, we should do this, you know, because she's woken up at 2:00 in the morning and thought of that, and that kind of thing. And so then, you know, it becomes a more informal thing, and towards when the book's ready to come out, we'll probably try and get, you know, we'll sort of over email or something, just put down a few more thoughts of going, well, hey, okay, is there anything particular you want to do? We'll be sending it out to these reviewers, and, you know, we've got this opportunity to do a launch, or we've got this opportunity here, or, someone's dropped me a line and say, hey, we'd love to interview these people or something like that. It's generally a lot, it's not locking anyone into a big firm marketing plan. As a bunch of ideas that we have that should hopefully get the word out. And it is something we could sometimes I'd probably like to do a bit more formally, but it's not something that we produce this Bible that says, okay, this is my responsibility, this is your responsibility. It becomes we've got this fantastic book. We both love the book. We both want to sell as many copies as possible. How do we do that? And it becomes, and different writers have different strengths. Greg Mellor, of Wild Chrome fame, has been incredibly active, getting copies into all the local, all the Canberra bookshops, because that's he's quite comfortable in wandering up to a bookshop and say, hey, I'm a writer, here's my book, do you want to stock 5 copies, that kind of thing. But not every writer is comfortable doing that. And it's a case that if I'm dealing with a writer in Queensland or Sydney or wherever, a lot of the time bookshops respond quite well to someone going in face to face, but I've got big email lists and phone lists and everything else, and I can talk to them, but they don't necessarily respond as if they've got the enthusiastic writer there with a pile of books right in front of them. So it is that there are limitations that we don't have, when we can't be on the ground everywhere in all places, but we try and work in with what we've got and work in with what the writer feels comfortable doing. If we occasionally come across a writer who doesn't like doing launches or doesn't like doing readings or whatever, then we'll do other stuff accordingly. But it's making sure the writer feels loved and appreciated and also comfortable with the whole process. So
with the example of Kat Sparks' book, you've mentioned.
You said cat, didn't you?
Yes, and she reacted. Okay, yes. You've mentioned Kat Sparks' book a couple of times. When is that actually due for release?
At the moment, we'll be having a bit of a release launch party at the NatCon over in Canberra at the end of April.
Yes.
So we'll have a big shindig and wave it around there, and then it will probably go out to all the main channels in early May.
So effectively, the national convention, which is in Canberra in late April, that's that's a pretty key central event to actually stage a launch at.
I mean, it's good, and it depends on. It goes from state to state. Different states have different strengths and weaknesses when it comes to these kind of things. For us, it was we wanted to launch it at Conflux because it's a convention that Kat has had a big role in over a number of years. So it's kind of, it's got that sort of feeling for her of being there, and it's she's in Wollongong, so Canberra's as close as anywhere. I haven't actually set foot in Wollongong, but I know enough people from there that I think I can probably get away with the occasional jab in their direction, and
Oh look, Norm Gunston did it first.
Yeah, if in doubt, there's always Dapto. So there is, it's got that sort of appeal, and Canberra's always been good for getting a whole bunch of writers. It's Canberra's very, it's not an area that seems to attract a lot of fans the way a Melbourne convention or a Perth convention would. It does tend to create more of a buzz for writers. So, and it becomes one of these things that, writers reach a point where they're big and famous and expect free books. No, not really. But, writers aren't necessarily, we're not necessarily trying to sell to writers, but it's good from from an awareness viewpoint. So it gets the word out among the really cool kids without necessarily, we're not going to sell hundreds and hundreds of copies, but we'll sell a respectable 30, 40, 50 copies. But it gets the it's more an awareness of getting it out to the cool kids and the right people, of saying, hey, wow, here's here's the book, and it does become, it is that whole thing where where people are having trouble. We're doing 10 books a year. People are having trouble catching up with exactly what we're doing. And especially if people aren't seeing it. So it's having that presence there to say, well, some people come up and say, oh, what have you done in the last year or so? I heard you did a book or two, and go, well, actually, here's the shelf. So yeah, it's more, Canberra's more an awareness exercise than necessarily expecting to be able to drive, get a chauffeur-driven limousine home all the way to Perth, throwing $100 bills out the window or anything like that. It's and that's what a lot of the convention circuit is in Australia, is getting the awareness out there and showing what we've done over the last 6 months or year since the last time people came by and had a look at the table. So,
have you ever been overseas to conventions to promote your books?
Only peripherally. The last overseas con I went to was the 2005 World Con in Glasgow, and at the time we were in a kind of just ramping up to do books again after taking a couple of years off. So it wasn't really a huge big focus of having a table or anything else. But we will be over in Brighton at the end of the year. For the World Fantasy Convention, and certainly hoping to put on a bit of a song and dance and display there to show the world what we're doing.
I've been told that the World Fantasy Convention is more a convention for professionals and much less a convention for fans again. Do you expect that to impact on the relationship of the book and your relationship with people?
Possibly a little. It's I mean, I don't know how. I've never sold at a World Fantasy Convention, so I'm not going into it with any expectations other than I expect to be sitting there at a World Fantasy Convention, and then Ian Banks or Neil Gaiman will walk past, and they might come up and stop, and I'll just be like, book. Sort of thing. So I expect to spend a lot of time hiding under a table going, oh my God, I don't believe all the people who are here. After it's been 18 years since the first convention where I met Ellen Datlow, and I kind of almost feel vaguely at ease in her presence now, but certainly there are going to be lots of people there, and I'm just going to be sitting in a corner going, I'm not worthy. So that's about all I really expect from that. But again, people will come by and look at the books, and I'm not if we sell books, but it's standing up and saying, well, hey, this is the stuff we're doing down under, and it is a book focused convention, at least, so it is more I'm not going to be having to finding myself in too many conversations about all these TV shows that I've missed or anything like that. But I expect to spend a lot of time being absolutely overawed at just everyone who's there, and the rest of the time I'll be sneaking out of the hotel to go stalk Nick Cave, because he lives in Brighton. So
yeah, Nick Cave. I remember the first time I ever saw Nick Cave was not in person. It was in Wings of Desire. Left a huge impression. Love that movie.
Yeah, many years of watching Rage, and sitting there half asleep at 3 o'clock in the morning, and then all of a sudden Nick the Stripper or Release the Bats or something got dug out, and it'd be like, oh yeah, I'm awake now, and I'm never going to sleep again. So yeah, that could be fun, but a fun time to just sit there and sort of do the nation proud.
Is there Anything else, like any other characteristics of small press or differences between small and large press, or any facets of the publishing industry that you'd like to bring up?
Small press are better because we care. Yes, I don't know. It's always been a very hard thing to explain to people who aren't necessarily attached to the publishing industry or have much experience in it as to what we actually do. When I try and tell people, we publish books, and so the first thing is, they go, oh, so are you a writer? And it's like, no, I'm a publisher. Writing's about the only part of the process I don't do. It's kind of interesting that we're involved in the whole process from the idea right through to the final product that sits very comfortably on our shelves and really should be sitting very comfortably on the shelves of those 3 people watching this show, or however many. What is your audience?
How many people? Depends who I'm interviewing. My most popular interview has had over 2,000 views.
Fantastic. Who was that? So if I sit there and slag off whoever that was, will that get me 2001 views, or
it'll get you a lot of hate mail?
I kind of think that's the problem. The challenge that we're seeing nowadays is by standing up and saying good, cool, positive things, you'll get X people following you. But if I was to sit here and bag, George Martin and Stephen King and a whole bunch of people like that, I'd probably get 4 or 5 times the audience. But that's not what we necessarily do.
That's it's a real issue when it comes to publicity, isn't it?
It is that whole thing that people go around looking for controversy, I think, and. If Juliette Marillier wants to stand up when she's done this, saying this is the best book ever, and it wipes the floor with something, with Marion Zimmer Bradley or something like that, then that's entirely up for her, I think, and we'll just sit there one way or the other. We're not, we don't tell our writers what they can and can't say about the process or the book or anything else. But I think we're in a world sometimes where, just doing the right thing doesn't get the same attention as doing the wrong thing. So, every so often I kind of think, but I'm also told that kind of controversy only works good in short bursts. So,
are there any particular examples of scandals that you've seen that have generated publicity in the short term?
I don't know. The Australian science fiction world does tend to be fairly. I don't know if it's scandal free or just that there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of people actually doing anything.
It's a very small community to be trying to incite that kind of flame war or something.
Yeah, it tends to be, very, very short and very forgotten, and I can't think of anything where it's actually put anyone on the map and really established, huge amounts of sales or anything else. I guess, we're probably, I think the Australian circuit tends to buck a lot of trends in that, we've got incredibly nice people out there like Juliette Marillier and Sean Williams and Garth Nix, who are just incredibly, incredibly nice, and they're the ones that are selling heaps and heaps of books. So we don't necessarily have too many enfant terribles. See, my French isn't that great. We don't have anyone of the likes of Orson Scott Card that is going to sit there and remembered for, once they were a really good writer, but now they're just a mouth with no brain.
Or Christopher Priest with his diatribe after the awards.
Yeah, I guess it's that thing that, and Christopher Priest has been on and off having a go at everyone over time anyway, but, he's still a really good writer. So, there's the ones that, and that's the thing. It's if it's the ones that have kind of earned that right to probably mouth off a little bit, then there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But it's the ones that haven't necessarily been around and earned that privilege, and that kind of like to dwell in the controversy of it all. But yeah, I don't know. And if there was some magic way of generating just the right amount of controversy to sell heaps and heaps of copies of books, I'd be looking at it. But yeah, I haven't worked out exactly what it is that does that. And maybe it's the book itself. Maybe if I actually said that Juliette Marillier actually writes 3 stories in here about Muhammad, maybe this will be the next bestseller, like the Satanic Verses, because certainly everyone's heard of the Satanic Verses, but I don't know how many people have actually read it.
But Salman Rushdie is a household name.
Yeah, exactly, and it kind of put him on the map. So, and yeah, I don't think any stories in there actually about Muhammad. But if you look closely enough, you'll find that Juliet uses every single word, every single letter that's in Muhammad at least once. If people really want to do that, and maybe if you sat there and read it backwards, you'd get something out of it. But yeah, I don't know necessarily that. It's controversy is not something we build into our marketing plan, and I don't think we've had too many really controversial books. We've certainly, I don't. On the other hand, we've certainly published some stories that really should be shaking the consciousness of people, and like Felicity Dowker in her fabulous collection. Have I said that enough? Felicity Dowker has got a story in here, and I want to get it's a long title. The female of the species is more deadly than the male. And it's stories like that really should be shaking, people should be out there talking about and shaking the consciousness. I think when Prickle Moon gets out into the main, and people, can buy copies and read it, her story in here, The Angel of Death, is going to get people thinking a bit, because it's not the Juliette Marillier they expect to see. It's, there's a couple of stories in there where she's really talking from the heart and channeling sort of the side of humanity that's still about magic and love, but it's also channeling the darker side as well. So it's things like that I'd like to see people talking about, and have, being controversial in that way, in that people are having writers who aren't afraid to deal with themes that make people uncomfortable. That's a controversy I'd like to see people talking about, of people dealing with content. It's not because Juliette Marillier or Felicity Dowker or Angela Slater or Lisa Hannett or any of those writers have stood up and said, whatever the latest controversial thing is, something about the Pope or something like that. They haven't. It's not. It's because their work is raising ideas and thoughts that people are having trouble dealing with. That's the controversy I'd love to see more of.
Did you see the Daily Mail Cyclit article?
No.
Oh, okay. The Daily Mail was actually having a go at YA authors and accusing a lot of YA literature of being cyclit, because it was dealing with really deep issues, like, for example, The Fault in Our Stars by John Green, about 2 teenagers dying of cancer.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, really powerful book, an absolute masterpiece, and the Daily Mail shreds it and hasn't even read it, I don't think.
Because it wasn't light and fluffy like Enid Blyton.
Yeah. So,
unless, of course, you're a gollywog. Yeah, I mean, it's different people have different. I think YA especially is probably one of those battleground areas. I mean, if you're talking adult fiction, then you can talk about pretty much anything, and people don't get concerned. But the minute it's YA, you've got the people who want to, there's kind of like the school of people who want to protect childhood as long as possible, and then there's the school of people who say it's a big nasty world out there and kids better learn how bad it is from the get-go, sort of thing. And I think it's a bit of a spectrum. It's a line continuum, of where people sit along that. I can certainly remember fondly going back about 13 years now to a writers panel at a Fremantle Writers Festival, and on one hand you had the YA writer Bridget Lowry, and on the other hand you had Dave Luckett, and they were talking about, well, what is taboo and what isn't taboo with YA, and Dave Luckett was very much, sort of down the conservative line of, very traditional. And then next to him is Bridget Lowry going, I debated for a while whether or not to put in the blowjob scene, but in the end put it in there. And Dave Luckett just went white, and it's kind of that thing of, what constitutes YA, and how much does it get exposed? So I guess maybe if I stuck the YA tag on everything we did, it'd probably generate.
That'd generate scandal.
Yeah, but it I think that's sort of, the genre expectations that, some people want to protect, childhood, and, it's like the debate they had with the woman who hammered Target for, she just wanted to buy some normal clothes for her daughter. That kind of thing, where different people have different ideas on this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I personally have a foot family in both camps. I want to protect childhood, but it's also a big bad world out there. Somehow or other, you've got to deal with both.
Yeah, and it's one of those ones of, I don't know where there's a middle ground, and fortunately, as the father of a cat, I don't necessarily have to deal with the middle ground at the moment so much. So, whereas Liz, as her her main job of being an English teacher, certainly is confronting that world more often than I am. So
I'm sure she's confronting it on a practically daily basis at school.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
But it gives her an idea of also what it gives an idea of what sort of things that that audience are reading. And apparently they're all reading The Hunger Games, so obviously violence is still okay.
Yes, it's funny. Violence is okay, but sex and drugs, not so much.
No, and cancer, no, not so much. But yeah, you can always get away with.
That's what they want to read, though.
Yeah, well, apparently that's what they want to read.
Hi.
I believe that Russell had something that he wanted to say to you on screen. He's forgotten.
I think I've already managed to work her into the conversation and thank her for all the tireless work she does. I guess that's the thing, because
I'm a no woman.
Because Ticonderoga started off as me, way back in the long before I met Liz, and my life was darker and nowhere near as enlightened. People do tend to associate Ticonderoga as being just me, and it is one of those things that Liz doesn't get the appreciation, and the public recognition as being just as much a part of it as I am. She's, and she's not always, as I said, she's not always the voice of reason and sanity. Sometimes she's the
frequently I am.
Frequently she is, but sometimes she's the girly, the squeeing girly fangirl. And
I've got to do this.
Yes, or So just as much as I'm the squealing girly fanboy, sometimes when it's like, oh my God, I've just sent such and such an email,
Awesome.
and so we get So we sort of balance each other out like that. But it is one of those things that it's definitely a partnership, and Liz sort of is more than half of what we do here, and I think eventually people will work that out, but it's sort of still people associate me as and I'm just a figurehead really. I'm just the Ticonderoga figurehead, where Liz is the puppet master behind pulling all the strings.
Well, one day I'd really like to talk to Liz, especially about what it's like working as an English teacher and working in a publishing house. I think that's got to be really interesting and maybe difficult at times.
There are a lot of words in my life.
I believe you. Yeah, well, thank you very much for talking to Dark Matter. You've got the 2 books coming up. You have Juliet Marillier's book and Kat Sparks' book. What are the other books you have coming out this year?
So we're just finalising doing the 2nd volume of Stephen Utley's Silurian Tales, which isn't related to Doctor Who, as we've established. That will be out sometime in March, if all goes to plan. Then in early April, we'll have Juliet Marillier's collection Prickle Moon. Then following very soon after that, we'll have Kat Sparks' collection The Bride Price. Also in early April, we'll have, and I don't have a copy to show yet because we're still working on that, is the fabulous Arabian Nights stories anthology that Liz Grzyb is putting out, called Dreaming of Jinn, and that's full of lots of cool fun stuff and has a really pretty cover. Then in early May, we'll have Kim Wilkins' collection of 5 novellas called The Year of Ancient Ghosts. I keep getting that confused with The Island of Angry Ghosts, which was a WA book, but no, it's The Year of Ancient Ghosts. And Kim will probably kick me if she ever sees this. Then after that, we'll have the next volume of the year's best Australian fantasy and horror, edited by Liz and also by Taylor Helene. After that, I think I'm not missing anything. We'll have Paddy Jansen's first big groovy science fiction novel, Ambassador. And around about the same time, we'll also have Leslie Robbins' collection Bittersweet. Just after that, we should have Jason Fisher's collection Everything is a Graveyard. And then we'll be rounding out the year with another Bloodstones collection, which won't be called Bloodstones, but it'll be edited by Amanda Pillar and absolutely fantastic. We're still finalising some details on that. And also, I believe either at the end of this year or early next year, we'll have the first volume in the Kingbreaker cycle by a fairly new Australian writer by Robert Ashby. And that one is called The Assassin. So I'm hopefully haven't, and I apologise to anyone if I've missed anything, but
you're doing amazingly well. That's quite a long list.
The Assassin will be next year, yeah. I've actually put up a page on our website that has the covers of everything we're doing for 2013, as well as a list of what, when and where. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to remember the images from that, but there should be 10 books in total. I also, in that, I forgot that in May we'll also have, for the first time for a while back in print, will be Glenda Lark's first book, Haven Star. Sorry, I had to think about that one as well. And that one first came out in about 99 through Virgin Books, who it came out. People went, ooh, wow, this is a fabulous book. It made it to like number 81 on the Amazon bestsellers list. And then Virgin Books promptly went bankrupt or collapsed for whatever other reason. So the book's been unavailable since then. So we'll have that one. That one will be out and back in print, in May.
Cool. So you've
So-
got a very busy year ahead.
Sorry, Liz has Liz is it's we've done a lot of the groundwork's been done, so it is that stage now that certainly in the first, in the early days of Ticonderoga, we would be it would be project to project, and it would be that we just finish a project and then go, oh, what are we going to do now? And books would literally be arriving back from the printer on the day they were launched. And those kind of things. Whereas now a lot of the groundwork's been done, so we're actually in the swing where places like we are getting reviews in places like Publishers Weekly, because we do have the books predominantly finished 3 months ahead of publication. So, but yeah, somewhere along the lines, we'll try and get as much of 2014's done as possible, so I can spend time concentrating on planning a wedding, allegedly, for as much as I'm dealt in on the decision-making process.
I keep saying you're the one with the
I'm just the one with the money.
events experience.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for talking to Dark Matter, both Russell and Liz.
And Liz, the shadowy background puppet master, yes. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to appear and talk.